Okay, let's set the scene. The year is 1906, and a brand new political player is about to enter the stage, one that will completely change the course of history for the Indian subcontinent, the All India Muslim League. Now, if you're gearing up for the UPSC exams, you already know that understanding the origins of the League isn't just a good to know, it's absolutely critical. So in this explainer, we're going to dive deep and break down exactly how and why it all came together.
And this is really the million-dollar question we're tackling today. The formation of the Muslim League wasn't just a single event that happened overnight. Nope, it was the result of decades of historical shifts, deep-seated anxieties, and some pretty sharp political maneuvering. So, what was really going on in British India at the turn of the 20th century? What made a separate political party for Muslims feel not just like a good idea, but an absolute necessity to its founders?
All right, so here's our game plan to get to the bottom of this. First, we're going to look at the long-term issues, this whole climate of concern that had been building up. Then we'll zero in on the immediate events, the sparks that really lit the fuse. After that, we'll watch the League actually come into being, get a handle on its original goals, see how it started to change, and finally, we'll wrap it all up with the key takeaways you'll definitely need for your exams.
To really get what happened in 1906, we have to rewind the clock a bit. You see, the story of the Muslim League doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. Its roots go deep into the political anxieties and the major power shifts of the late 19th century.
So what was this climate of concern all about? Well, for starters, think about it. After the Mughal Empire faded and the British took firm control, the Muslim elite felt their power, both political and economic, was just slipping away. At the same time, you had a powerful resurgence of Hindu cultural and religious movements. And then, the big one, in 1885, the Indian National Congress was founded. Now, while it called itself a national party, many influential Muslim leaders looked at it and thought, hang on, this seems to be mostly for Hindu interests.
And you know, this wasn't just some vague feeling people had. It was being voiced by major leaders. Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, a hugely influential thinker, was very direct about it. He publicly warned Muslims not to join the Congress, arguing they needed to focus on protecting their own community's interests first. His words really laid the intellectual foundation for what would happen next.
So you've got this pot of concern that's been simmering for decades, right? But what was it that finally made it boil over? Well, a couple of key events in 1905 and 1906 acted like gasoline on the fire, pushing things forward at a much faster pace.
Okay, this timeline is absolutely crucial, so pay close attention. It all starts in 1905 when the British partition Bengal. This creates a new province with a Muslim majority, and it immediately ramps up communal tensions. In response, a group of Muslim leaders, led by the Aga Khan, goes to meet the Viceroy, Lord Minto, in Shimla. This is the famous Shimla delegation of October 1906, and their main demand? Separate electorates. Just 2 months later, in December, the Muslim League is officially founded. You can literally see the dominoes falling, one after the other.
Now let's pause and make sure we're crystal clear on this term, because it's probably the single most important political concept of this entire story: separate electorates. What does it mean? In simple terms, it's a system where only Muslim voters could vote for Muslim candidates. The thinking behind it was that this was the only way to guarantee that Muslim representatives, who are actually accountable to their community, would get a seat at the table in the government.
And so, with all that background in place and the recent events pushing things forward, the moment finally arrived. This next part is all about the who, what, where, and when of the League's official creation.
All right, these are the hard facts, perfect for your flashcards. The All India Muslim League was founded on December 30th, 1906. Where? In Dhaka. And here's a key detail. It happened during a meeting of the Mohammedan Educational Conference. The founders you need to remember are Nawab Salimullah of Dhaka, the Aga Khan, and Nawab Mohsin Mulk. The Aga Khan was tapped as the first president, and the main headquarters was set up in Lucknow.
But it's so important to look beyond just the founders and ask, what was the role of the British in all of this? You see, they weren't just sitting on the sidelines watching. A lot of historians argue that the encouragement they gave to the Shimla delegation, and by extension the League, was a textbook example of their divide and rule policy. The idea was to create divisions between communities to make it easier for them to maintain control.
So the party is officially born. But what was its mission statement? What did it actually want to achieve right out of the gate?
The League's initial objectives really came down to 3 main points. Number 1, to protect and promote the political rights and interests of Indian Muslims. Simple enough.
Number 2, and this is a really important distinction from the Congress at the time, was to promote loyalty to the British government. They believed cooperation, not confrontation, was the way to go. And number 3, to achieve those political goals, especially their top priority, separate electorates.
But here's the thing about political parties. They don't stay frozen in time. They change, they evolve. And the Muslim League of 1906 was definitely not the same as the Muslim League just a few years later. Let's see how its entire outlook began to transform. A massive early victory came for them in 1909. This is the year of the Morley-Minto reforms, when the British government officially granted the League's #1 demand, separate electorates for Muslims. For a brand new party, this was a huge deal. It gave them instant political validation and a ton of credibility.
And you can see the ideological shift so clearly here. The League started out all about loyalty to the British, working with them to get what they wanted. But by 1913, things had changed dramatically. The goal was no longer just about getting concessions. It was now about demanding self-government for India. That's a huge shift that brought them much closer to what the Congress was saying.
So what on earth caused this 180-degree turn? Well, a major factor was a new generation of younger, more assertive leaders joining the party. And the most famous of them all was Mohammad Ali Jinnah. His entry into the League in 1913 is seen as a pivotal moment, pushing the party towards a much more confrontational, anti-colonial position.
All right, we have covered a ton of ground. Now it's time to distill all of this down into the absolute must-know points for your revision. If you remember nothing else from this explainer, make sure you've got what's coming up next locked in. Okay, here are your exam essentials. 1. Understand the causal link. See it as a chain reaction. Congress is formed, which leads to Muslim concerns. Then the Partition of Bengal happens, which triggers the Shimla delegation, and that directly leads to the League's formation. 2. The core demand. Remember, separate electorates was the name of the game, and they got it in the 1909 Morley-Minto reforms. And 3. That ideological shift. Be super clear on how the League went from being pro-British to demanding self-rule, largely thanks to new leadership.
And we'll end with a big question for you to really think about. Was the creation of the Muslim League something that was bound to happen anyway because of the existing differences between Hindus and Muslims? Or was it mostly a clever political strategy, encouraged and maybe even engineered by the British to keep their empire intact? The real answer, as is so often the case with history, probably lies somewhere in that complex space in between.